You know, they have a saying in business, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I built an empire on that principle. 40 years of grinding, scheming, and outmaneuvering every soul who dared to stand in my way. I thought I knew every player, every angle, every secret hidden in the ledgers and the boardrooms. But I was wrong, dead wrong. The biggest secret of my life wasn't hidden in a spreadsheet or a hostile takeover. It was sleeping in the house next door, nurtured and raised by a woman I once loved, to be the greatest rival my own son would ever know. And the day I finally spoke the truth, God, I felt the very foundations of my family crack right under my feet. It was last Tuesday. The rain was sheeting down the windows of my study, each drop sounding like a tiny hammer blow. My son, Kyle, he was pacing like a caged tiger, his expensive shoes wearing a groove in my Persian rug. The air was thick with the smell of old leather, fine scotch, and pure, undiluted rage. "Hayes done it again, father." Kyle snarled, whirling around to face me. His face was flushed, a vein throbbing right there on his temple. I could see his hands, clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Alistair Croft, that smug, sanctimonious pirate. He just undercut our bid on the Henderson contract by a fraction of a percent. A fraction? It's not possible unless he had our numbers. He has a mole in my accounting department, I know it. I took a slow sip of my Macallan 25, letting the warmth spread through my chest, trying to find a calm I absolutely did not feel. Kyle, the Henderson account is a drop in the ocean. A profitable drop, I grant you, but an ocean nonetheless. Why let him get under your skin like this? Why? He slammed his hand down on my mahogany desk, making the crystal decanter jump. Because it's not about the money anymore. It's about him. It's the way he looks at me at the Chamber of Commerce events, that little smirk like he knows something I don't. He's been a thorn in our side for 15 years, and I am going to rip his business out by the roots and watch him beg for mercy. I will destroy him. The venom in his voice, it chilled me. This wasn't the boy I taught to ride a bike. This was a man consumed by a hatred I had unknowingly fed his entire life. I felt a cold dread start to pool in my stomach. This had gone too far. This fire had let spark it was about to burn my whole world down. "Sit down, Kyle," I said, my voice low, a command that brooked no argument. He glared at me, his chest heaving, but he finally sank into the wing-back chair opposite me, his body rigid with unspent fury. This feud with Alistair Croft, I began, choosing my words with the care of a man defusing a bomb. It has to stop. He let out a harsh, sarcastic laugh. Stop. Now. When we're this close. Father, we have him on the ropes. My legal team has found a discrepancy in his overseas licensing. It's a technicality, but it's enough to tie him up in courts for years, bleed him dry. It's beautiful. It's justice. The word justice hit me like a physical blow. There was no justice in this. Only a sin, decades old, coming due with astronomical interest. I looked at my son's face, so sure of his victory, so blind to the truth standing right behind him. I knew what I had to do. The weight of it was crushing. "Kyle," I said, and my voice trembled. I saw his eyes narrow because Terry Sterling's voice never trembles. "What I am about to tell you, you can never unhear it. It will change everything you think you know about this family, about me, and about the man you call your rival." He leaned forward, skepticism etched on his face. "What are you talking about? Did he blackmail you? Is that it? What does he have on you?" I shook my head, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. "It's not what he has on me. It's what I owe him." I took a deep, shuddering breath. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall, each tick a second closer to the end of my life as I knew it. Alistair Croft, his mother was Eleanor Croft. Kyle threw his hands up in exasperation. I know who his mother was. A lovely woman. Died too young. Blah, blah, blah. What does that have to do with anything? I looked him straight in the eye, forcing myself to hold his gaze. I knew Eleanor. Long before she married Reginald Croft. Long before you were born. The words were like shards of glass in my throat. We were involved. Kyle's expression shifted from anger to confused disgust. Involved. What? You dated? So what? Everyone has a past, father. This is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, I whispered, because when Eleanor married Reginald, she was already pregnant. The silence that followed was heavier than any I have ever known. It was a living thing, sucking the air out of the room. Kyle just stared at me, his brain trying to process the simple, horrific math. I saw the numbers clicking behind his eyes, the timeline, the dates, the age of his rival. His face went pale, then slowly flushed a dangerous, mottled red. No, he said, the word "allo," guttural denial. No, you're lying. You're trying to protect him for some sick reason. You're lying to me? I wish to God I were, I said, and the sincerity in my voice finally seemed to crack his disbelief. Alistair Croft is not just your business rival, son. He is my son. He is your half-brother. The reaction was instantaneous and volcanic. Kyle shot out of his chair as if electrocuted. My what? He roared, the sound echoing off the bookshelves. He stumbled back, knocking over a small side table, sending a porcelain lamp crashing to the floor. He didn't even flinch. He just pointed a shaking finger at me, his eyes wide with a betrayal so profound it seemed to fracture his very soul. You all these years? All this time you've been fighting him, hating him, and you knew. You knew he was he couldn't even say the word. He looked at me like he was seeing a stranger, a monster. The anger was gone, replaced by a raw, gut-wrenching hurt that was 1,000 times worse to witness. Kyle, please, I said, standing, my own hands out in a pleading gesture. Let me explain. Explain? He shrieked, a hysterical edge to his voice. Explain what? How you cheated on my mother. How you had a bastard son with another woman. How you let me spend my life trying to destroy my own. He choked on the word, his body trembling with the force of his emotions. The humiliation, my God, the entire city they'll know. They'll all know. They'll laugh at me. The great Kyle Sterling, bested for years by his own father's dirty secret. He wasn't thinking about the familial connection, the brother he never knew he had. He was thinking about his pride, his reputation, the public shame. The greed for victory had been replaced by a terror of humiliation. The Sterling name was everything to him, and I had just dragged it through the mud of a history he never knew existed. He doesn't know, I said quietly. Alistair has no idea. His mother never told him. Reginald Croft raised him as his own. He believes it. Kyle let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh of pure derision. Oh. Well, that makes it all better then, doesn't it? The poor fool has been fighting his own family without even knowing it. What a touching tragedy. He advanced on me, his eyes blazing. All those times I came to you for strategy, for advice on how to crush him, and you knew. You sat there, in this very chair, and you counseled me on how to destroy your own blood. What is wrong with you? The question hung in the air, and I had no answer. There was nothing I could say that would justify it. He was right. I was a coward. I had chosen the easy path of silence over the devastating path of truth, and in doing so, I had betrayed both of my sons. I was trying to protect this family, I said weakly, but the excuse sounded hollow even to my own ears. Protect us? Kyle spat. You've ruined us. Don't you see? If this gets out, no. When this gets out, we will be the laughing stock of the entire business community. The Sterling legacy will be a joke, a tawdry soap opera. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, utterly distraught. My legal team is hours away from filing motions that would have bankrupted him. I was going to take everything from him. And now you tell me I can't, because of this. He looked at me with such utter contempt that I had to look away. I focused on the broken pieces of the lamp on the floor, a perfect metaphor for my shattered family. The fortune, I said, the words tasting like ash. My will. It's already changed. Kyle froze. The anger and hurt on his face were instantly wiped clean, replaced by a cold, calculating stillness I knew all too well. It was the same look I got when a major deal was on the line. The look that saw people as assets and liabilities. In that moment, I saw myself in him, and it terrified me. What did you do? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I couldn't let it go on, I said, meeting his gaze again, finding a sliver of my old steel. I couldn't let you destroy him, knowing what I know. It wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be just. Justice? He hissed. You don't get to talk about justice. What did you do? I drew myself up to my full height. The sterling fortune, the company, the holdings, everything. It's split. 50-50. Between you and him. The color drained completely from Kyle's face. He looked like a ghost. For a long moment, he was utterly silent, just staring at me as if it just pronounced a death sentence. Then, the storm broke. No. The scream was ripped from somewhere deep inside him. You can't do that. You can't. That fortune is mine. It's ours. Mother's. My children's. You would give half of it to that stranger. That mistake. After everything you've done for this company. Everything you've built for you. You built it for yourself, Kyle, I said, my voice weary. And so did he. And it turns out you've both been building the same damn thing. You're two sides of the same coin. My coin, I won't allow it, he whispered, shaking his head, backing away from me as if I were contagious. -1 contest the will. I'll tie it up in courts until Hayes a old man. I'll prove you were coerced, that you weren't in your right mind. No judge in the world would enforce this insanity. Every judge in the world will enforce it, I said calmly, because it's backed by a DNA test I had done 6 months ago. I've known for a while. I've had time to prepare. My lawyers have all the proof. It's ironclad. The revelation that I'd known for 6 months and said nothing was the final, brutal blow. I saw the last vestige of hope die in his eyes. He wasn't just looking at a father who'd made a mistake, he was looking at a strategist who had outmaneuvered him. He sank back into the chair, utterly defeated, his head in his hands. The mighty Kyle Sterling, brought low not by a corporate raider or a market crash, but by his own father's past. The only sound in the room was his ragged, broken breathing. So, what now? He mumbled into his hands, his voice thick with despair. You expect me to what? Welcome him to the family. Go into business with him. Partner with the man I've spent my entire adult life loathing. That, I said, feeling the immense, impossible weight of what I had set in motion, is exactly what I expect. The alternative is to let the world know why you're suddenly dissolving a rivalry that has been the talk of the town for a decade. The alternative is utter humiliation. For you, for him, for me, for the sterling name. The papers will have a field day. Your mother, God, your mother. I saw him flinch at the mention of his mother. The shame was a weapon, and I hated myself for using it, but it was the only tool I had left. He looked up at me, and his eyes were empty. All the fire was gone, leaving only cold, gray ashes. You've destroyed me. You do know that, don't you? You didn't just betray me. You've professionally and publicly annihilated me. I have to choose between a partnership that makes my skin crawl or a scandal that will follow my children for the rest of their lives. He stood up, his movements slow and robotic, like a man heading to the gallows. He walked to the door without another word, without even looking at the broken lamp at his feet. He paused at the threshold, his hand on the polished brass knob. He didn't turn around. I need to see it, he said, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion. The proof. I need to see the DNA test. It's in the safe, I said, behind the portrait of your mother. He gave a slow, grim nod, and then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him with a terrible finality. I was alone in the ruins of my making. I could hear his footsteps fading down the hall, towards my study, towards the safe, towards the unassailable truth that would shatter the last of his denial. I poured another scotch, my hand trembling so badly the bottleneck shattered against the glass. I had done it. I had stopped the war. But the cost was my son. The look in his eyes, it will haunt me until the day I die. I thought the hardest part was over. I thought telling him was the summit of this mountain of pain. But I was wrong, because the safe wasn't just holding a DNA test. It was holding one more letter. A letter I wrote to Alistair Croft telling him everything. A letter I never had the courage to send. And as I heard the faint, mechanical whir of the safe's dial spinning from down the hall, a new, ice-cold fear gripped me. Kyle would find the letter, and he would know my next move before I even made it. He would know I was planning to tell Alistair the truth. He found the letter. Of course he found the letter. It left the combination written on a scrap of paper tucked under the blotter. A foolish old man's habitant. My son, my brilliant, ruthless son, would have turned that room inside out until he found what he was looking for. I heard the whir of the dial stop, the heavy clunk of the bolt releasing. Then silence. A silence so deep and so long it was louder than any scream. I just stood there in my study, staring at the door head walked out of, the scotch in my hand forgotten, my heart pounding a sick, frantic rhythm against my ribs. I was waiting for the explosion. I was braced for the door to fly open and for him to come charging back in, waving that damning piece of paper in my face, his betrayal complete. But the explosion never came. Instead, I heard his footsteps again, not the angry, stomping pace from before. These were slow, measured, deliberate, the footsteps of a man who had just been handed a weapon and was calculating exactly how to use it. They came down the hall, not with haste, but with a terrifying, surgical precision. Each footfall on the polished oak floor was a nail being hammered into my coffin. The door didn't burst open. It swung inward, quiet and controlled. And there he stood. In one hand, he held the sealed manila envelope from the genetics lab, the one with the stark, clinical logo. In the other, he held my personal, cream-laid stationery, the sheet covered in my own scrawling handwriting, the letter to Alistair I could never bring myself to mail. He didn't look enraged anymore. The storm had passed, and what was left in its wake was something far more dangerous, a cold, crystalline calm. His face was a mask, utterly unreadable, but his eyes, God, his eyes were like chips of flint. They were fixed on me, and in them I saw no son, no hurt child. I saw a CEO assessing a hostile takeover target. He stepped fully into the room, letting the door click shut behind him with that same awful finality. He held up the DNA report. "It's true," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any inflection. It was the most terrifying sound I have ever heard. 99.9% probability of paternity. He said it like he was reading a stock ticker, a piece of data with no emotional weight whatsoever. Then he let the envelope drop from his fingers. It fluttered to the floor, landing atop the shattered pieces of the lamp. Then he held up the letter. He didn't read from it. He didn't need to. Had memorized it. "Dear Alistair," he began, his voice still that horrible, dead monotone. "I'm writing to you today concerning a matter of the utmost personal sensitivity, one which I have, with great cowardice, put off addressing for far too many years." He paused, his flinty eyes drilling into me. "Cowardice. You got that part right." He took a step closer. "It goes on. It talks about my mother. It talks about your profound regret. It talks about your duty to set things right before it is too late." Another step. The space between us was shrinking, charged with a new kind of tension. And then it gets to the part where you very generously offer him a place in this family and his rightful share of the sterling legacy. He stopped right in front of my desk. He leaned forward, placing his palms flat on the polished wood, his shoulders hunched. He finally let the calm crack, and a sliver of pure, venomous malice seeped through. "You were going to tell him," he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation of the highest order. "Kyle, I started, but he cut me off with a sharp, slashing motion of his hand. You were going to tell him." Each word was a dagger, pointed and precise, without consulting me, without a thought for what that would do to me, to my position, to my family. You were just going to send this apology and unleash that man on us. You were going to hand him half of everything on a silver platter and invite him to Sunday dinner. He straightened up, looking down at me with utter contempt. The letter dangled from his fingers. "All these years, Father, I thought you and I were a team. I thought we were building something together, protecting something together. But you were never on my team, were you? You were always on your own, protecting your own secrets, your own conscience." The injustice of that struck me to my core. That's not true. Everything I have ever done has been for this family. "For your family?" he roared, the mask finally shattering, the fury returning in a terrifying wave. "For your reputation. Don't you see? You let me become the villain in his story. You let me be the monster trying to destroy poor, unsuspecting Alistair Croft while you sat back, the benevolent patriarch, waiting for the right moment to bestow your grace upon him and reveal the truth. You made me the bad guy so you could be the goddamn hero. I was speechless, because in some twisted, dark corner of my soul, I knew there was a sliver of truth in what he was saying. I had let the feud continue because I was afraid of this moment. I had hoped, in some pathetic way, that one of them would simply win and the problem would solve itself. I was a coward. He saw the admission on my face. A cruel, satisfied smirk touched his lips. Yeah, that's what I thought. He waved the letter. This changes everything. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The will is one thing, he said, his tone becoming businesslike again, a predator circling its prey. A legal document. We can fight it. We can delay it. We can make his life a living hell trying to claim it. But this he held the letter aloft. This is a confession. This is you, in your own hand, admitting to an affair that would have destroyed your marriage and humiliated my mother. This is you detailing a plan to bring your illegitimate son into the family fold. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. What are you saying, Kyle? I'm saying the power dynamic has just shifted, father. The smirk was back. Wider now. Ugly. You thought you were forcing me into a partnership or humiliating me. You gave me a choice between two bad options. But this gives me a third. He walked around the desk, coming to stand beside my chair. He leaned down, his mouth close to my ear, his voice a low, intimate threat. Here is the new deal. You will call your lawyers first thing in the morning. You will tell them you've changed your mind, that you were under duress, that you weren't feeling yourself. You will tear up that new will and reinstate the old one, the one that leaves everything to me. I felt a wave of nausea. Kyle, I can't, you can, he interrupted, his voice hardening. And you will. Because if you don't, if you so much as hint to Alistair Croft about who he really is, I will not contest the will. Oh no, it'll do something much worse. He paused, letting the threat hang in the air between us. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and sharp, and it made my stomach turn. I will take this letter, he said, holding it in front of my face, and I will go to Mother. I will sit down with her, and I will read it to her, word for word. I will tell her how her husband of 55 years betrayed her. I will tell her about the son you kept secret. I will show her the DNA test. I will watch her heart break in real time, and I will make sure she knows that you were planning to tell the world, to bring your shame into her home without ever having the decency to tell her first. The room swam around me. I reached out a hand to steady myself on the desk. My vision tunneled. Of all the ways I thought this could go, I never imagined this. This wasn't business. This was personal, brutal vengeance. You wouldn't, I gasped. Your mother, her health, Kyle, the shock it would destroy her, he finished for me, his voice devoid of any mercy. I know, and that, father, is why you're going to do exactly what I say. You're going to disinherit Alistair Croft. You're going to keep your filthy secret, and you're going to live with the knowledge that you are doing it to protect the woman you swore to love and honor. You're going to choose her. Or I will make the choice for you, and you will live out your days knowing you are the reason she's lying in a hospital bed or worse. I felt the world drop out from under me. He had me? He had me completely. He had found the one thing, the one person I would sacrifice anything for. Margaret. My Maggie? The thought of her hearing this from him, of seeing the light in her eyes go out, it was unthinkable. It was a fate worse than any professional humiliation. He saw the surrender in my eyes. He straightened up, a look of triumphant disgust on his face. He folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, patting it gently. "I'll keep this safe," he said. "Consider it insurance, now. Do we have an understanding?" I could only nod, my throat too tight to form words. The shame was a physical weight, crushing me into the chair. "Good," he said. He turned and walked back towards the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob and looked back at me, a final parting shot. "You know, for a man who preached about keeping enemies close, you sure did a piss-poor job of recognizing the one you raised in your own house. and then he was gone. For the second time that night, I listened to my son's footsteps fade away. But this time, he wasn't a wounded animal. This time, he was the victor, and I was his prisoner. I don't know how long I sat there. The ice in my glass melted, diluting the expensive scotch into a pathetic, watery reminder of my own weakness. The rain had stopped. The only light came from the green-shaded lamp on my desk pooling on the wood, illuminating the fallen DNA test. I had gone from trying to do the right thing to being blackmailed into committing a profound injustice against my own son. My other son. A man who had no idea his entire identity was a lie and who was now to be cheated out of his birthright because of my continued cowardice. The weight of it was suffocating. I thought of Alistair. I saw his face, the few times we'd met at those stuffy charity galas Cull hated. He had my jawline. I see that now. He had my mother's keen, intelligent eyes. How had I never seen it? He was always polite, reserved, but with a sharp wit head reveal if you engaged him on topics other than business. He loved antique maps of all things. I'd once spent 20 minutes talking to him about a rare 17th century nautical chart, and I remember thinking, this man is wasted in business. He should be a historian, and I was going to betray him too, to save myself. To save Maggie from a truth she didn't deserve to bear. But as I sat there in the crushing silence, a new thought began to form, slow and stubborn, like a green shoot pushing through concrete. Kyle had the letter. He had the leverage. He thought he had checkmated me. But he was so consumed with his anger, with his need to win, that had forgotten one crucial thing. Had forgotten that I am Terry Sterling, and I didn't build an empire by folding when I was backed into a corner. He wanted to make this personal. He wanted to use my love for my wife as a weapon against me. Fine. Two could play that game. If he wanted a war not of business, but of family, a war for the very soul of our name, then a war he would get. But it wouldn't be fought in the boardroom. It wouldn't be fought with lawyers and hostile bids. It would be fought in the heart of my home, and I would have to use the only weapon I had left that was sharper than my son's greed. I would have to use the truth, not the truth he was holding hostage, but another truth, an older one. I pushed myself out of the chair, my old bones aching. I walked over to the bookshelf, to a section filled not with business manuals, but with photo albums and old keepsakes. My fingers trailed over the leather spines until I found the one I was looking for. It was old, worn at the edges. It wasn't a DNA test. It wasn't a legal document. It was my wife's diary, from the year I met her, from the year before I strayed. Kyle thought he knew the whole story. He thought my affair with Eleanor Croft was a simple tale of betrayal, but he was wrong. The story was so much more complicated than that, and the key to unraveling my son's vengeance, the key to maybe, just maybe, finding a way out of this hell I'd created, wasn't in a lab report or a lawyer's office. It was right here, in my wife's graceful, looping handwriting, and as I opened the cover and saw her name written there, a fresh wave of guilt and determination washed over me. I was about to violate her privacy in the most profound way to save us all. I just prayed that when she found out, she would forgive me. But first, I had to see if my desperate, half-formed hunch was right. I had to know if the secret I'd carried for 45 years was the only one in this marriage. And the answer to that question would change everything. Again, you ever have a secret so heavy you forget what your own soul sounds like without its weight? For 45 years, I carried mine. I thought it was the only one. I thought I was the sole architect of the fault line that was about to tear my family apart. But I was wrong. Kyle left me there, in the ruins of my study, thinking he'd won. Thinking he'd found the ultimate weapon in my own cowardice, my love for his mother. And in that moment, he was right. The threat of hurting Maggie, it paralyzed me. It was a checkmate move. But what my son, in all his brilliant, furious cunning, forgot is that the oldest players know the board isn't just the squares you can see. It's the history of every game ever played upon it. And sometimes the only move left is not to advance, but to go back. Way back. My eyes fell on it almost by accident. A worn, dove-gray leather album tucked between a book on corporate law and a biography of Churchill. It wasn't a diary. Not really. It was a memory book Maggie kept in the first year of our marriage, 1958. A time when the world was all possibility and the future was a straight, bright line. Before I bent it, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely undo the little string clasp. The leather was soft, smelling faintly of lavender and thyme. I opened it, and there she was, my Maggie. Not the elegant, slightly frail woman she is now, but a girl of 22, her whole life blazing ahead of her. Her handwriting was a lively, looping script, so full of hope it was like a physical ache to look at. There were pressed flowers from our first garden, ticket stubs from picture shows, a menu from the little Italian place where I'd taken her the night I'd proposed, and on the pages, her words, her dreams, for us, for our future, for the children we would have. September 12th, 1958. Terry brought me a single yellow rose today. Had remembered I said it was my favorite. He was so nervous his hands were shaking. Hayes the strongest man I know, but he trembles when he gives me a flower. I think I shall love him until the day I die. I had to stop. I had to close my eyes. The guilt was a physical pain, a hot knife twisting in my gut. This was what I had betrayed. This pure and wavering faith. I was the villain in this story. Kyle was right about that. I kept turning the pages, each one a fresh wave of remorse. And then I saw it. The reason my heart had led me to this book. It wasn't a conscious thought, it was a desperate, clawing instinct. The entries stopped abruptly in mid-October. The pages for the rest of that month were blank. Then, in November, they started again, but the handwriting was different. It was still Maggie's, but it was tighter, smaller. The vibrant loops were gone, replaced by a careful, almost grim control. November 5th, 1958. The weather has turned. The leaves are gone. It feels like the whole world has settled in for a long sleep. I feel quiet inside. Terry is so busy with the new business, so full of fire. I am so proud of him. I must be strong for him. I must be the calm in his storm. There was a photo tucked into the crease of that page. It was us, at a company picnic. I had my arm around her, grinning like a fool, oblivious. She was smiling too, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was a distance in her gaze, a sadness I'd been too busy, too self-absorbed to notice. And then I saw it. In the background of the photo, barely in focus, was a car. A familiar, sleek Jaguar. Reginald Croft's car. And standing beside it, talking to another man, was Eleanor. She was looking not at the man she was speaking to, but directly at the camera. Directly at Maggie. And the expression on her face wasn't one of friendly curiosity. It was one of pity. And something else. Something that looked an awful lot like guilt. My heart started to hammer again, but this time it wasn't with dread. It was with a terrifying, burgeoning hope. A hope so dangerous I almost couldn't let myself think it. I remembered that fall. I remembered being consumed by the business, working 18-hour days, coming home exhausted. I remembered Maggie had been quiet, a little withdrawn. It put it down to the change of seasons, to loneliness. It promised her it would get better, that once the company was on its feet, we'd travel, we'd start a family. It promised her the moon, while I was already starting to orbit another planet. I turned the page again. Another entry, a week later. November 14th, 1958. Ran into Eleanor Croft at the grocer's. She looks well. She asked after Terry. She always asks after Terry. She said, "It must be so hard for you, Margaret, being so alone while Hayes building his empire." She said it kindly, but it felt like a knife. I told her we were a team, that his victories were mine. She just smiled that sad little smile of hers and said, "Of course they are, dear." The pieces were there, scattered on the page. I'd been so wrapped up in my own guilt, in the narrative of my own sin, that I'd never once considered could Maggie have known. Not everything, not the specifics, but could she have suspected? The lonely wife, the attentive, beautiful other woman offering a sympathetic ear, it was a classic story. Had Eleanor, in some twisted way, been taunting her? And then I found it. The entry that changed everything. It was on a loose sheet of paper tucked in the very back of the book, as if Shed needed to write it but couldn't bear to give it a proper place in her memories. December 1st, 1958. I cannot keep it inside any longer. The silence is screaming inside me. I saw them today, coming out of that little hotel on Elm Street. Terry and Eleanor. His hand was on the small of her back. He was laughing. He has laughed like that with me in months. The world just stopped. I thought I would be sick right there on the pavement. I turned and walked away. I don't know where I went. I just walked for hours. What do I do? What do I say? Mother always said a woman must be the keeper of her home, the preserver of her family's peace. If I confront him, I could lose him. I could lose everything we've built. And for what? A moment of weakness. A mistake. The paper was blotched in places, with tears. My Maggie's tears. She had known, almost from the beginning. She had seen us, and she had made a choice. The same choice I was now being forced to make. She had chosen to protect the family, to preserve the peace. She had swallowed her own devastating heartbreak and carried on. For me, for the future, for the children we would eventually have. She had chosen us, and I had never known. I had gone on for decades, patting myself on the back for being such a clever secret keeper, never realizing the person I was most deceiving was myself. My wife, the quiet, strong woman at the center of my universe, had known my darkest shame all along and had loved me in spite of it. The revelation didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a hollow, aching loss. The magnitude of her sacrifice, her quiet strength, made my own actions seem even more tawdry and small. Kyle thought he could use the truth to destroy her. He had no idea the fortress of silence she had already built around her heart. But this changed everything. Kyle's weapon was now a dud. The threat of telling her was meaningless. She already knew. The shock wouldn't come from the revelation of the affair, but from the fact that it was now being dragged into the light, used as a weapon by her own son. I closed the book, holding it to my chest like a holy relic. The weight of it was different now. It was no longer just a book of memories, it was a testament to my wife's incredible, painful love. And it was my map forward. Kyle thought he held all the power, but I now held a power he couldn't possibly imagine, the truth about his mother's strength, and the truth about the timeline. Because as I sat there, reeling from Maggie's words, another cold, sharp realization sliced through me. Alistair was born in August of 1959, 9 months after December of 1958. My affair with Eleanor had started in the late fall. It had been intense, passionate, and I had always believed the catalyst for everything. But what if a terrifying, dizzying possibility opened up in my mind? What if it wasn't? What if my sin was even greater or perhaps, in some twisted way, less than I'd always believed? I had to know. I had to be sure. I didn't call my lawyer to change the will back. Instead, I did something far more reckless. I picked up the phone, my hand steady for the first time that night, and I dialed a number I knew by heart but had never ever planned to use for this. It rang twice before a crisp, alert voice answered. Croft Residence. Alistair, I said, my voice rough with a night of whiskey and revelations. It's Terry Sterling. We need to talk. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear his brain whirring, trying to compute why his greatest business rival's father would be calling him, and I glanced at the clock nearly midnight. Terry, he said finally, his tone guarded, neutral. This is unexpected. Is everything all right? It's rather late. No, I said, the words simple and stark. Nothing is all right, and it's later than you can possibly imagine. I need to see you. Tonight. It's about your mother. And it's about me. Another pause, longer this time. I could feel his suspicion radiating through the phone line. My mother has been dead for 10 years, Mr. Sterling. Whatever business you have with me, it can wait for business hours. It's not business, I said, putting every ounce of earnest, desperate truth I possessed into my voice. I swear to you, Alistair, on my wife's life, this is not business. This is about family. Your family. And mine, and the fact that they might be the same thing. Please. The silence that followed was absolute. I was asking for his trust based on nothing. I was the father of the man who had been trying to ruin him for a decade. Where? He said, the single word clipped and tight. My study. Now. Come to the side gate. I'll leave it unlocked. I gave him the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. And then the line went dead. I sat there in the silence, the old memory book in my lap. I had just lit the fuse. I had no idea if the explosion would save us or finish us off. But for the first time that night, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. It was a terrifying feeling, but it was better than the helplessness. The 20 minutes felt like 20 years. Every creak of the old house, every sigh of the wind outside, made me jump. I half expected Kyle to return to catch me in this act of ultimate betrayal against his blackmail. But the house remained still. Right on time, I saw a shadow detach itself from the deeper darkness of the garden and approach the French doors of my study. The handle turned silently. Had come alone. Alistair Croft stepped into the room. He was taller than Kyle, leaner, with a quiet, reserved intensity that always made him seem older than his years. He was dressed in a dark sweater and trousers, as if had been working late himself. His eyes, my mother's eyes, swept the room, taking in the shattered lamp on the floor, the empty glass on my desk, the weary, broken old man sitting before him. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, waiting, his expression unreadable. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice sounding ancient. You said it was about my mother, he stated, his tone giving nothing away. It is, I said. I gestured to the chair opposite me. Please, sit. What I have to tell you, it's going to be difficult to hear. He remained standing. I'm accustomed to difficult news, Mr. Sterling. Get to the point. So I did. I had no elegant way to say it. No way to soften the blow. I just laid the brutal, ugly truth on the table between us. Alistair, your mother, Eleanor, and we had an affair. It was a long time ago. It was brief. And it was wrong. He didn't move a muscle. His face might have been carved from stone, but I saw a flicker in his eyes, a minute tightening around his mouth. I see, he said, his voice dangerously calm. And you called me here in the middle of the night to unburden your conscience, to tell me that you cuckolded my father. Forgive me if I don't offer absolution. That's not why, I said, holding his gaze. In telling you because of when it happened, and because of you. Now I had his full attention. The professional mask slipped, and I saw raw, human confusion. Me. You were born in August of 1959, I said, the words hanging in the air like a verdict waiting to be read. He did the math. His brilliant, analytical mind couldn't help it. I saw the numbers clicking, the timeline assembling itself. His birth, 9 months prior. The end of 1958. The time of my affair. The color drained from his face. The stoic composure cracked. He took an involuntary step backward, shaking his head. No, he whispered. No, that's not your lying. This is some kind of trick. A new tactic from Kyle. My father was Reginald Croft. Reginald Croft was a good man, I said, and I meant it. He loved you. He raised you as his own. I believe he knew, and he loved you anyway. But biologically, Alistair, I am your father. I reached down and picked the DNA report up from the floor. I held it out to him. He stared at it like it was a venomous snake, making no move to take it. This is insane, he breathed, his voice laced with a disbelief so profound it was almost awe. All this time the bids, the lawsuits, the sheer hatred Kyle has for me and were. He couldn't finish the sentence. He looked like a man whose entire history had just been erased and rewritten in a language he didn't understand. Brothers, I finished for him, the word feeling both sacred and obscene in the context of their lifelong feud. Half-brothers, yes. He finally sank into the chair, his legs seeming to give out beneath him. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders slumped. The formidable Alistair Croft was gone. In his place was a lost, bewildered boy. The room was silent except for the ragged sound of his breathing. I let him sit with it. I didn't try to offer comfort. There was no comfort for this. After a long time, he looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. They were sharp with a new, cutting clarity. "Kyle," he said. "Does he know?" I nodded. "I told him tonight, just before I called you. And The single word was loaded with a lifetime of conflict. And he didn't take it well, I said, a massive understatement. He found out about the will. It split everything. 50-50. Between you? Alistair's eyebrows shot up in genuine shock. That, it seemed, was a twist he hadn't seen coming. You what? It's the only right thing to do, I said. The only just thing. A bitter, humorless smile touched his lips. Justice. That's a rich word. So, what was his play? I assume he has one. Kyle always has a play. This was it. The moment of truth. I had to trust him. I had to bring him into the fold completely. He found a letter I wrote to you, telling you everything. Hayes using it as blackmail. Hayes threatened to tell my wife, to read her the letter, to show her the DNA test if I don't change the will back and disinherit you. He thinks the shock will destroy her. Alistair absorbed this, his mind already working, analyzing the angles. And will it? I took a deep breath. No, I said. It won't. I reached out and gently slid the old memory book across the desk towards him. Because she already knows. He looked from my face to the book and back again, utter confusion replacing the calculation in his eyes. What? She's known for 45 years, Alistair. She saw us. She found out almost at the time, and she chose to stay. She chose to protect this family. She buried her pain so deep I never even saw it. Until tonight, I tapped the book. It's all in here. He stared at the book as if it were radioactive. He made no move to touch it. The revelation that Margaret Sterling had carried this secret, had lived with this pain, seemed to shock him as much as the news of his own paternity. My God, he whispered. The strength that must have taken, so you see, I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. Kyle's threat is empty, but his intention is not. He wants to hurt her. He wants to use her pain as a lever to get what he wants. He doesn't care about the family. He only cares about the fortune, about winning. Alistair was silent for a very long time, staring into the middle distance, his mind racing. I could see the two halves of his nature warring within him, the ruthless businessman who had been my son's worthy adversary, and the man who had just had his world turned upside down. Finally, he looked at me, and his eyes were clear and decided. What do you want to do? The question surprised me. What? You didn't bring me here just to unload your guilt, he said, a hint of his old sharpness returning. You have a plan, or the beginnings of one. What is it? What do you want from me? In that moment, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years, respect. This man, faced with the most shocking news of his life, was already cutting through the emotion to the strategic heart of the matter. I want to stop him, I said, the word simple and true. I want to protect my wife, and I want to try to make things right, or as right as they can be after all this. I can't force you to be brothers, but I can stop you from being enemies. The will stands. The fortune is split. But Kyle will fight it unless he has no other choice, Alistair finished for me. He leaned forward, a grim light in his eyes. He thinks Hayes the only one who can play hardball. Hayes forgotten who Hayes been playing against all these years. A slow, determined smile spread across my face. It felt foreign on my tired features. So, what do you say? For once, instead of trying to destroy each other, would you care to help me save this family? He looked at me. This son I never knew. This man who was so much more than the rival had seen him as. I saw the ghost of a smile touch his lips. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a master tactician seeing a path to victory had never considered. All right, Terry, he said, using my first name for the first time. It sounded strange, but right? All right. Let's play? The word hung in the air between us. It was no longer a game of business. It was a game of legacy, of truth, of family, and we were just getting started. The first move was mine. I picked up the phone again. This time, I dialed my home number, the one upstairs in mine and Maggie's bedroom. It rang for times before she answered, her voice soft with sleep. Terry, is everything all right, dear? It's so late. Maggie, I said, my voice thick with a love and a regret so deep it was a physical ache. I need you to come downstairs. To my study? There's someone here you need to meet. A pause. At this hour. Who is it, darling? I took a deep breath, looking at Alistair, who watched me with an unreadable expression. It's time, my love, I said, the words a promise and an apology. The long quiet is over. It's time we all finally talked. I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. She didn't ask any more questions. She didn't need to. After a lifetime of silence, she knew. They'll be right down, she said, her voice quiet but steady, absolutely steady. And as I hung up the phone, I knew the final, most terrifying act of this family drama was about to begin. The curtain was going up, and all the players were taking the stage. Kyle thought he held all the cards, but he was about to learn that the strongest hand isn't held by the one with the most secrets. It's held by the one with the most truth. And for the first time in 45 years, we were all finally going to be playing with the same deck.